It's time for this week's episode of Brandon Sports Talk, featuring in-depth interviews from those who are trending in the world of athletics. And now, here's the host of Brandon Sports Talk, Brandon Pate.
Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I had the privilege of interviewing the Babson's head men's ice hockey coach, Coach Jamie Rice. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Brandon. Thank you very much for having me today.
Thank you. Can you talk about how you knew that you want to get started in coaching in college men's ice hockey?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I had always been around athletics. I've told the story a few times to some of my players. I was the youngest of five kids with my family. I didn't have grandparents. I didn't have cousins. My mom was an orphan. My father was essentially an orphan. His father died when he was really young and raised by aunts. So teams always became my extended family, and I enjoyed competing in whatever it was. I enjoyed being on teams. Again, those players on my teammates were like my cousins, and their other parents were like my uncles and aunts. I don't think I recognized it at that point, but I think looking back now at 57 years old, that's probably what, stuck with me the most when I was involved in it, that athletics became my extended family. And then I was really fortunate in high school, to continue to be able to play football, hockey, and baseball. And while I was doing that, I was also working a summer day camp, which was kind of athletics based. So, the teaching, coaching thing was really, really appealing to me. I had spent my entire life growing up watching BU hockey, live and in person, different than how it's watched today. Most people are watching on a phone or a tablet, but I was, attending every game. My parents had season tickets. Went to every game I think until I was 17. And I probably watched our seats were right behind the bench, so I probably, inadvertently was watching the coaches as much as anything, and it just kind of started to take root. And then when I was at Babson, I had a fellow who was the captain the year ahead of me had taken an assistant job at Colby College, and he wasn't going to go back. And I was a senior, and I knew I wanted to coach or teach. And he said, "Hey, why don't you try this?" And I don't think I set out when I was 8 to be a college hockey coach, but I think it evolved through time where I knew I really enjoyed teams and being around people, and coaching. When I was in high school, I would coach a youth baseball team or a youth hockey team in the summer. So I kind of fell into it because the guy who wound up being the best man at my wedding and a teammate of mine tried it at Colby for a year, and it didn't stick with him, and it has with me.
For you, what was that experience like playing collegiate ice hockey at Babson?
It was wonderful. Really fortunate to have been given the opportunity. Pierre McGuire and Steve Sterling. Steve Sterling was my coach for all 4 years. Pierre McGuire recruited me. And then, Paul Donnell became my assistant. I was really fortunate to play for, people who were invested in winning without question, challenged us to be our best, but ultimately gave me the opportunity. But more importantly, and what I hope we've carried over to today, is I was really surrounded by a lot of great people who have become my best friends. And so playing there in the moment was nothing more than the opportunity for me to do something I really loved with a bunch of guys I really liked. Looking back now, it was transformative. But at the time, I love hockey. I love to play. I'm with my buddies. We've got a pretty good team. Let's keep this going. And then I also played baseball as well. So I had a lot of teammates and a lot of friends, and my wife, and played field hockey and lacrosse. So I was just around athletics and just loved it. I loved playing. And I loved being at Babson. So it was a great fit.
For you, what was that experience like putting on that jersey and representing them?
Yeah, I don't think it's changed to this day. Um, Even though I don't put the jersey on, we have a sign in our locker room that says I am proud to wear this uniform because I'm aware of who's worn it before me. And when I got here in the fall of 1986, Babson was, essentially 2 years removed from a national championship. So you certainly felt the honor and the pride of playing for a program that, has consistently been for the better part now of 45 years, uh, nationally competitive year in and year out. Is every year winning a championship? No, but it was a great source of pride. Um, and in some sense, I think for all of us, a little bit of an accomplishment when you finally get a chance to continue what you're doing at the college level. It's a small number of athletes, and to do it at Babson was, really just, I'm grateful and fortunate.
For you, what was that experience like being the assistant coach at Colby?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know anything. I think like anybody starting any job, I was young, eager, energetic, full of a lot of ideas, but I didn't know anything, and I had to figure out, what it took to be successful. I had a lot of great guidance from Charlie Corey, who was my first boss. But I had to learn, how do you follow up with kids? How do you write them? How do you call them? I mean, there was no email. There was no, electronic. How do you answer your answering machine when you're on the road? Going to games. And I was fortunate that Paul Donato, who, as I said, was my assistant coach when I was here, was the assistant at Babson at the time. And he took me under his wing, and hey, I'm going to go here. You should go to this. But then in a lot of ways, it was trial and error. Like, here's a tournament. This is where it's located. Get out the old Rand McNally Atlas. How am I getting from Waterville, Maine to this point? Go do it, and then come back and say, okay, what was that? And certainly, I think one of the unique things about coaching at the college level is the recruiting piece. But you start to see a lot of hockey. You watch a lot of kids, and you start to develop an idea of what you like as a player or what you're looking for. But a lot of it early on certainly reverted to me comparing people to who I played with at Babson. So my first year or two, I was probably consistently watching kids and saying, oh, he reminds me of, X teammate. He reminds me of Y teammate. And that was a good player. So that's what I'm going to continue to like. But a lot of trial and error.
What was that experience like coaching in the Ivy League at Dartmouth and at Brown?
Yeah, I've been incredibly fortunate in that I've worked at some incredibly, uh, high-end academic institutions, including Babson and Northeastern, but certainly Colby and Dartmouth and Brown. And I think one of the things that I enjoyed the most, and you recognize right away, is that you are surrounded by highly motivated, driven young men and women. I'm adding coach women, so I say men, but I'm not saying that because I don't realize that there's women there. Um, Dedicated, passionate, driven, intelligent, high work ethic, really understood the value of how everything fits completely, and that athletics was really important to them. But it was a piece of who they were. It wasn't their sole identity. It wasn't minor pro. And then just the people you meet on those campuses. I think there's a reason that they've been successful for a long time, but desired. There's a lot of people at those institutions, and I would include Babson now, which is in an Ivy. They love being at the institution, a part of the community, the people they meet, and they don't want to leave. But it was great. I mean, to have been at Colby, Division III, and I wasn't good enough to be a Division I hockey player, but then to have the opportunity to coach in Division I, and certainly at a couple of the greatest schools in the world was humbling, exciting, and a heck of a great experience.
While coaching at Brown, what was that experience like going against those teams like Princeton?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I'll be honest, when I first got to the assistant job at Dartmouth and then Brown, I didn't know a lot about Ivy League hockey outside of Harvard. Growing up in Greater Boston, I knew Harvard. They were in the Beanpot. They had Billy Cleary was the legendary coach. They had Lane McDonald and the Fuscos and Teddy Donato. Like I knew Harvard, but I don't think I fully understood, the depth and breadth of what the Ivy League meant and what Ivy League hockey was like in itself. The only thing I knew about Princeton was my good friend who is now our baseball coach at Babson, Matt Noon, played baseball there. And we had played American Legion baseball together. We had played in the college together, in the college summer league. We had known each other since we were probably 12 competing against one another. So that was all I really knew. So I think the first time getting to Hobey Baker rink and reading, spending an hour just reading about Hobey Baker and looking at everything that he had done and why the rink was named. Obviously, I knew the Hobie Baker Award. And Toot Cahoon had just gotten there as a coach. And I knew Toot because I was a BU fan growing up, and he played there and coached there. So you could immediately sense his energy and excitement, and whatever Princeton had or hadn't been before. And they'd had some great players, some local guys from around here like Johnny Missouri. They had been a good team, but you could sense that Toot was bringing this energy that was going to change the course of Princeton hockey pretty quickly, by hook or by crook. He's a great coach, well connected, great recruiter, but the energy that he brought to Princeton was palpable from across the ice on the other bench.
For you, what was that transition like going from being assistant coach to now coming over back to Babson to become the head coach?
I think it's like I mentioned earlier when I started Colby, I didn't know anything. I think when you're an assistant, you're always, oh, I think I would do this. If I ever get to be a head coach, I'm going to do that. Oh, I don't like what we're doing here. I would do it this way. And then you get it yourself. And I think you're prepared in your experience, but you're not prepared for the decisions and the impacts that you have to make as a head coach. So I felt confident that I could, quote unquote, coach hockey, but I probably quickly realized, and certainly at the Division III level, where you are the chef, cook, and bottle washer, that there was a lot more that went into it, and I was going to have to really be involved and dedicated and consumed by all aspects of the program. Certainly coming back to Babson was a little bit easier transition because I knew the rink, the locker room, the AD who hired me was my assistant baseball coach. So I had an advantage that way. I certainly knew the school academically and the type of school it was, but as far as just the job itself, I couldn't have been more prepared with the experience I had with the coaches and people I worked with. And I had coached in the Mass Satellite program and coached at USA Hockey National Festivals as a head coach for a month or a week. But just like when I started as an assistant, it's like, wow, there's a lot more that goes into this than I realized. It's not just putting on a tie on Friday night on game day.
For you, what was that feeling like coming back home and being announced as the next head coach?
Incredibly humbling. Babson's had such a great and rich history of hockey. To have had, my former assistant coach and head baseball coach, Paul Donato, when he decided to retire to spend more time with his family, his kids were younger and playing sports, to have him be the one who recommended me meant a lot to me. To basically have the opportunity that, Paul had and Steve Sterling and Rob Riley and, the people that had really been around my hockey career was an incredible feeling. And then certainly I think there was, when you hear from a lot of your former teammates, that they're happy for you and they're excited you're back, that's a very humbling and it's a feeling that's kind of indescribable. I'm not sure humbling really does it quite well because these people that you spent all this time with, and, at that point, we had been friends for 15, 18 years, depending on what years they were in school, but just like, hey, we're excited. This is going to be great. It was kind of like, oh, I really appreciate it because I'm not sure I knew how much, or what they thought of me when we were playing together. So it was really great to be entrusted with this opportunity.
For you as a head coach, what was that first win like for you?
It was nerve wracking. I mean, I think, it's not a Disney story, where you go in. I mean, again, you've spent 14 years being an assistant, and then all of a sudden, it's like, okay, here it is. It's your game. I think I've tried and continue to try to this day to stay out of the way. I really think my job as a coach is, we traditionally play Friday and Saturday. The beginning of the season, there's longer preseason, but I feel like my job is Monday to Thursday. So on Friday and Saturday, I want to get out of the way and let the kids do what they do and let them perform to the best of their abilities. I think I'd be lying if I didn't say there was a certain sense of accomplishment. Personally, not like, hey, look at me, but like there's a saying in baseball that the time in the minors is invaluable. And there was a certain feeling, I think, more so that morning than going out. Because once you get to game time, it's like, how are we going to win this game? But that morning, having a chance to reflect, it's like, the the 28-day road trip in Western Canada where I was away for 28 straight days, or driving from Boston to Des Moines to watch a kid play, or, Sunday at 4:00 coming to meet a family who was visiting from out of town when you're at Northeastern, or, the sacrifices that other people made, including especially my family. There was a certain sense of like, it's all been worth it. When the game ended, and I think it's tradition in any sport, the players, congratulations, they give you the puck. I actually took the game puck. I don't have it. I sent it to Bob Gaudette, who was then the coach at Dartmouth, who had been my boss for 7 years. And I just sent it to him. And I said, I certainly wouldn't be where I am today without his incredible impact on me. And I just wrote him a note and sent it to him. And I said, this is really belongs to you more than it belongs to me. So I don't have that puck. No offense to the guys who were on that team who gave it to me and were, happy for me. I just felt like, it was Bob Gaudette was, amongst other people, but probably chief and foremost, the one who helped define me as a coach. I mean, when I got to Brown to work with him, I was 23 years old. And by the time I left at Dartmouth with him to go to Northeastern, I was, 31. So he was right in my sweet spot of coaching age-wise. I mean, he saw me get married. A lot of life's milestones personally also involved him professionally. And so we won the game. I was thrilled. And that Monday I sent him the puck, but I'll never diminish any win. I don't discriminate. I like them all the same. The first one or the 300th or the second or the 15th or the 80th. I don't care. I just like to win.
Can you talk about, of course, the culture that you started to build for the program?
Yeah, I think culture and books on culture and people wanting to find the secret sauce to culture is probably a little bit overdone right now. I mean, I think I just try to be authentic. I cry in front of my players. I get upset in front of my players. I get happy in front of my players. My family has been in and around this program since I've been here. The little kids to now they're, in college and graduating college. So I think our culture, whatever it is or isn't, it's unique to us. It's just authentic. But I don't think there's any secret sauce that we've done A, B, C, D. I just try to be myself, allow the kids to be themselves, certainly have a fair bit of standards and what we want to do and how we want to do it and why we're going to do it. But at the end of the day, I like to say to people, you do you, just be yourself and be authentic and be genuine. And if that's the case, then I think everyone can flourish to be their best. I think it becomes a pretty good community. But I don't think there's any, we did this and we had this rule and we made everyone adhere to that. It's organic and each place is different. If you try to take other people's culture, if you read a board, St. John's basketball this year, they had a great year. What do they do? How do they do it? That's great. It's a recipe and it works for Rick Pitino, but what he does with St. John's basketball may be significantly different than what we do at Babson hockey, and maybe significantly different than what John Hines is doing with the Minnesota Wild, and maybe different than what the LA Dot, like there's 1,000 ways to do it. So the authenticity is what I hope we are.
Who are some of the teams in your conference that you compete against?
So ironically, our conference is changing next year. So we are currently, or probably most accurately, just ended being a member of the New England Hockey Conference, which used to be the ECAC East, which is the conference I played in. And next year we're transitioning to the Little East. But excuse me, Hobart, who's won 3 consecutive national championships at our level, they're in our league, or we were both in the NEC together. But as we transition to the Little East, we're going to maintain relationships with 3 teams that we've been playing for 50 years: UMass, Boston, Norwich, and New England College. We've been playing them for 45, 50 years. We were all in the ECAC East and the NEHC together, and we're all going to the Little East. We're going as an affiliate member. Southern Maine and Castleton, we've been playing since I've been here. So as long as I've been the coach at Babson, they've been a part of our league. We're joining, the Little East has Plymouth State, who we've played in my 21 years here. we've developed we've been playing them consistently non-league. UMass Dartmouth, who used to be a team we'd play non-league when I was a player here, and then we have two new teams in Western Connecticut and Keene State, who will be new teams to the league. So we're changing conferences. We're going to lose Hobart and Elmira and Skidmore, teams that we played in the last, 20 years with Hobart and Skidmore, and about 8 now with Elmira 7. So we're losing those relationships, but we're being able to keep, some of the ones that we've had for a real long time.
What is that home game atmosphere like when teams like Southern Maine come to home versus going to UMass Boston?
It depends on how good your year is going, when it falls on the calendar. Certainly, I think 21 years ago compared to now, there's a lot more options for, our kids, our crowd. We're competing. There's a lot of hockey in this area. Both, we're not competing with the Bruins, but, you've got multiple colleges, BU, BC, Harvard, Northeastern at Division I level. You got Stonehill, you got Holy Cross, you got Providence College. There's other Division III schools. So, one, we tend to be watched by friends and family. And I don't use that negatively. 2, if you have a good team and good kids, I think people enjoy watching their friends. So that helps grow it. 3, depending on how we're doing in a given year, there's more excitement around winning than there is losing. So we've had some crowds in here where, honestly, it's hard for me. We have to go from our locker room to the benches, coaches, kind of through the crowds. It's not that, it's not a modern Coliseum. It's a hockey rink. Sometimes it's hard and it takes a few. Sometimes you can go through and the only thing you got to worry about is getting hit by a tumbleweed. So it's just a matter of when we're playing, when on the calendar. But even like the students, when I was a player here, like going to an athletic event was the social aspect for the students. Now they can sit in their room and in 5 minutes get food delivered to them, watch a movie that just came out, and talk to their friends all on something that's, handheld. So, you used to have to get out to interact with people and to get food and to go see things. Now they can watch the game in their dorm room with Grubhub delivered to the door and do it with a friend on FaceTime. So I don't know if that's helped or hurt us our attendance, but I think it's the reality.
What does that recruitment process look like for those prospective student athletes?
So that it's two-pronged. One, we certainly are out recruiting, watching, looking for hockey players we think can help our program. 2, there's kids who reach out to us, hey, I have an interest in your school. We cannot see everybody play that we'd like to, or that's interested, or that's out there playing hockey. There's just so many teams and opportunities. So they reach out to us. Some guys we go and see. Sometimes it's a call from a coach or a friend. One of our best players of my 21 years, a young man named Ryan Black, was a first-team All-American, was the conference player of the year as a senior. My roommate and my line mate, who are the same person, John Hurley, had coached him in youth hockey. And he called me one day and said, hey, this kid Ryan Black, who's at Winchendon, I coached him in youth hockey. I think he's pretty good. Just take a look at it. So, we get one of our best players in the last 21 years, and honestly, probably in the history of the program, off a phone call from a teammate. But there's also ones that we've gone and we watch and we sit in the stands and we scribble notes on and we talk to their coach and we call the kid and we recruit him for 6 months. And then there's ones that have written to us the first time and said, hey, this is my name. I'm playing at X. I'm interested in your program. And all of a sudden they become a recruit. So there's a lot of ways to get here. And then we have some young men who, honestly, we didn't know much about, who get in on their own and they wind up being on our team. So again, back to the beginning, don't discriminate. We just want great kids who are good players.
As the head coach in alma mater, what is it like seeing those freshmen putting on that uniform for the first time versus your seniors putting it on for the last time?
Good question, Brandon. I think the freshman piece, it probably doesn't sink in as much. You look at them and you feel similar, I think, to how I felt my first game. I'm happy for them. It's a hard road to get to play any level of college hockey. So congrats. We don't make a point of it, but I can see it in their eyes. And they're nervous, no matter how good you've been, it's a whole different thing. And you got to remember, too, when they get to Babson or any college, they're playing for a new coach for the first time in maybe 1, 2, or 3 or 4 years. For the seniors, it's bittersweet. And we had it happen this year. Like no one ever plans what they're going to say after the last game because except for one team, it ends in defeat. So you don't have a script. I guess I'm always proud to see how much it's meant to them because they have a hard time taking it off for the last time, and when they do take it off after that last game, that is the last, time they'll take it off as a Babson player, whether they play professionally perhaps or men's league or whatever. But I'm always taken aback by just looking at them and the challenge they have to take it off because hockey's been an important part of their lives for 18, 17, 16, 19 years.
How is that like getting to see them putting on that Babson jersey for the last time in their first NHL jersey?
Well, we haven't had any Babson guys I've seen put on an NHL jersey, so that's certainly the next time we have it. I'll call you back and let you know what it feels like. Um, I think we want to see our guys succeed. So we've had some guys play minor pro. I mean, the closest we've had is, we had when I was at Northeastern, Jimmy Fahey was the first player I had coached who played in the NHL. And we had a young man, Mike Morris, who I recruited, was the first kid I recruited who was taken as a first round draft pick. So there's, and that isn't me, that's them. They did the work. I mean, I'm just along for the ride. I get to Northeastern, this kid, Jimmy Fahey, who's an unbelievable player. And, you get to coach him. And then when you see him play, it's like, wow, good. You're like, good for you. It's not about you at all. And same with the draft. So I think I'm happy for him, but I'm also happy when one of our guys gets a job they want here at Babson, or they buy a house that they want. Or, I think of this past December, I was driving to a game. One of my players called me and he just had twins. And in the room next to him at the hospital was another former player of ours who had a daughter. I mean, it's just, whatever they're doing, if they're succeeding, that's the great fun in seeing it, and certainly in the hockey world, playing in the NHL is the ultimate, but, there are going to be a lot of guys who are, quote, NHL caliber, the best of the best in their given field. And maybe it's as a father, maybe it's as a husband, maybe it's as a person in the workforce, but I get just excited for that.
What have been some of the things you've been able to accomplish so far, and what are some of your future plans and goals for the program?
I want to win the next game. I mean, I think that, as a coach, you're always looking kind of backwards, like what have we done well? What haven't we done well? You're in the current day trying to say, okay, well, how are we going to get from Thursday to Friday? And the future, you're looking at what's our schedule next year? How are we going to travel? Where are we staying? So it's all kind of going on at the same time. We just want to be the best team we can be. I want our program, our team, our kids, the individuals I want all of us to reach our ceiling. I want us to play to our best ability. I want the kids to play their best ability, to academically achieve to the best of their ability, to socially, emotionally be the best version of themselves. So I guess we're just, it's not even the next win. It's like, let's, keep pushing and striving to be our best.
What advice would you give those incoming freshmen entering the first year of college ice hockey?
Don't lose your passion. Don't lose how much you love the game, but you got to understand how incredibly hard it's going to be. Everyone winds up as a freshman. They're at a new school. They're living away from home, possibly for the first time, but even if not, they're living in a completely different environment. There is a ton of independence. There are a ton of forks in the road where you can make one or two decisions, and you got to keep trying to take the right fork and make the correct decision. You're going up another level, so the pyramid keeps rising, so it gets harder. It's harder to be good. And I think for the first time, they have to understand that failure is going to be real and present and persistent in their lives, maybe for the first time, and how adept they are at handling that, the challenges, the difficulties. I think the quicker they will adapt and be able to hopefully succeed.
What advice would you give those seniors that have aspirations of playing in the NHL?
well, we're far away removed from the NHL, so that's unlikely. I mean, I think that anybody who's come to me, and we've had a number of kids play professionally, but mostly lower level minor pro and some in Europe, um, is, when you stop playing, you stop playing. So if you want to play, go for it, enjoy it, have fun, give it a whirl. Because when you're done, you're done. Like you're never going to be in a locker room, except for me. I'm in the sandbox of life, but you're never going to be in a locker room playing with your friends again, or with other people, or playing the game in a jersey. So if you want to play, go for it, give it all you got. And the last time you take it off, remember that's going to be the last time. So keep going as long as you can. I mean, that's probably why I coach. I mean, I said at the beginning, I never wanted to not be on a team. So this is the way I've been able to be on a team consecutively since I was probably 6 years old.
What advice would you give those future head coaches that are looking to build their own program?
Oh, be yourself. I mean, I think that we all need a shepherd. We all need somebody who can help us get from A to B. We all need someone who kind of is our true north, that forms who we are and what we think as a coach. But at the end of the day, be yourself. You could have worked for the most successful coach. You could be the assistant at Hobart, and they've won 3 national titles. If their assistant gets the head job at School X tomorrow, I tell them, Mark Taylor's an incredible coach. He's been a great boss. I'm sure your program has kicked tail for 3 years. You're like 84-4-3, but you got to be yourself. You have to be your authentic self, and learn as much as you can, and realize that, much like the players, failure is going to happen. Jerry York is the winningest coach in the history of college hockey, and he basically went 3-2 every 5 games. He's got just over a 60 winning percentage, which is incredible. But when you break down a 60 winning percentage to 3-2, it's like, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. 3-2 is appears to be a fairly pedestrian. No one's gonna say, "Oh my God, you're 3-2. What an unbelievable!" But you do it for a long time, and you do that a lot, and then you mix in some 5-game stretches where you're 4-1, or 5-0, or 3-1-1, 3-0-2. It grows. But Jerry York is an incredible coach, incredible human being. His teams played with such pride for one another, and you couldn't help but admire what he did. And then when I looked at it one day and saw his winning percentage, I think it was around 620. It's like, geez, that's 3-2. And so I guess for me, for our program, for any coach, if you can be a little over 500, you're doing a really good job. It's hard to win. The other team has coaches. They practice, they play, they lift weights, and they want to win too. So you can't get too high when you win. But if you don't appreciate it, that's not good. And you can't get too low when you lose. If you're not disappointed, that's not good. But the reality is, for any coach at any level, if you're somewhere over 500 to 600 winning percentage, you probably had a pretty good career.
That's great advice. Where can my listeners find you on social media along with the program
at? So at Babson Hockey is our Twitter, X, whatever it is, 57. I'm lucky I didn't call it a rotary phone. I am on X, Twitter at Ricer18. Our players run an Instagram account. I am not frequently on that because I have teenage daughters, so I don't think the stream should cross. But I think it's probably Babson Hockey on Instagram. The players run that and do a great job. Again, they're much more hip to what's in and what's not. I'm still wearing khakis and tennis sneakers, so I don't think I'm really the modern version of what's in. But those are the places we can be found. Again, Babson Hockey is just at Babson Hockey on Twitter, and probably Instagram similarly.
Thank you again, Coach Jamie Rice, for your interview, and best luck in your future at Babson as the head men's ice hockey coach.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate you taking the time to investigate what we're all about here at Babson and what makes me tick. So thank you very much, Brandon.
Thank you. You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at Talk_Brandon, and you can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again, Coach Rice, for your interview, and best luck in your future.
Thank you.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.